Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another video podcast with Neal Makwana and myself, Michael Parekh, AI Reset to Zero, the show where we talk about how the two generations, the Gen Z and I guess the Boomer, how we view all these exciting changes ahead of us with AI on the way we do things on the internet. And today's show is actually very special in that context because there's a lot of puzzling going on up and down the AI tech stack that we talk about on our Substack, AI Reset to Zero. Neal, if you can put up the six boxes, a lot of the attention around the internet is literally on the hundreds of billions of dollars that the OpenAIs, the NVIDIAs, the Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS are spending to build these massive data centers. This is boxes one, two, three, and then using all the data on the internet to create everything that drives today's large language models. And then all of that gets to, with the help of box number 5, which is all the tools and software tools that allow you to create, or developers, literally millions of them. There are 6 million developers who use NVIDIA's CUDA software for their GPUs. And all of that is basically to build the applications, the cool things we all do. The 5 billion people on the internet today, whether it's on desktops or mobile, who are using the internet and now increasingly are using AI services like chatbots. The most recent numbers are OpenAI has at least 500 million people every month using their ChatGPT AIs on the internet. So that's box 6. This is the holy grail. This is the box with the most rubber meeting the road applications that people use. These are the highest margin applications on the internet. And the other companies that are also participating very aggressively here are, of course, the Googles, which have over 2-3 billion people every day using Gmail, Google Drive, etc. And of course, Apple, which has over 2 billion devices, Macs, laptops, MacBooks, iPhones, of course, which is over half of Apple's revenues, watches and AirPods and so on. And these are the vehicles through what we're going to see a lot of new applications come through. And there's a lot of excitement around that. Neal and I talked in the last couple of shows about some of the big things that have been happening with OpenAI buying Johnny Ive's company to create 100 million plus AI optimized devices. But the fact of the matter remains that every day, or any one of us, when we use the internet, we use an application we don't think about as an application anymore. It's the web browser. It is literally the place, the software that we use every day to do personal things, business things on the internet. And there's over 3-4 billion of these things. The two primary companies that make the browsers that have the biggest market share, of course, Google Chrome, which has over 60% of the world's market, and the other one is Apple Safari. And those two, both on the desktop and the mobile devices, are literally the portal that we all used every day to access the internet and do things on the internet, etc. Increasingly, all these AI tools, the chatbots, the AI reasoning tools, the agentic tools, etc., these applications are going to be interacting via the browsers to the people. So what does that mean? That means that the internet, as we've all known it for the last 25 years, this whole business model of hundreds of billions of dollars of advertising revenue, subscription revenue, etc., that has accrued to companies like Google, Meta, Apple, it's all being jostled around. And the hundreds of millions of websites on the internet, the people who have all kinds of businesses on the internet, their business models are being jostled around. And so there is a widespread fear amongst a lot of internet observers that the internet as we know it, the business models are broken, that AI is going to basically shake things around, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And so, the general view on that is, oh my God, glass is half empty. The internet is broken. What's going to happen? AI is going to churn things around. But this show, we're going to discuss why the glass is actually half full, that the kinds of things we're going to do on the internet are going to require new ways to use the internet and will create new opportunities for all the websites that people are concerned about. But that remains to be seen. So today we thought we'd talk about a couple of things around this. That number one, all the browser companies, Google Chrome, Apple, everybody around OpenAI. OpenAI is actually rumored to be working on an AI optimized browser. A company like Perplexity, which a lot of people use for internet searches, is also beta testing an AI browser that is basically going to be, it's called Comet, and we'll see that soon. I've written about some of these things on my Substack, and at the end of this post, we'll have the posts up there, and we'll give you the specific post numbers on our show notes. But the idea here is to talk about what this might look like, because most of us haven't seen this. Most of this software, these AI browsers have not yet been released. But there is a company, a startup that both Neil and I have been big fans of, called the Browser Company. It was started about 6-7 years ago by a founder or CEO called Josh Miller. And they've had a number of instances of showing where the browser could go. So they have a very popular browser called the Arc browser. Neil is a big fan. And about a few weeks ago, they basically said, we are going to go from the Arc browser to something called the Dia browser. It's an AI optimized browser. It's an alpha test, but there's sufficient videos out there that gives us a glimpse of what it might look like in terms of fusing chat bots and browsers. So we thought we'd show you some of this, talk about this, and it should be hopefully a very informative show in the next little bit. But first, why don't we show Neil a clip of the concern about the internet is broken. The Verge had a clip, had a discussion. I would, if you're interested, you should watch the whole episode. But Nilay Patel, who's the editor-in-chief, along with the senior reporters David Pierce and their colleagues, were talking on the show about how the internet is broken. I think it'd be useful to see a little bit of the glass half empty part of the narrative. Go ahead, Neil.
Sounds good.
He's off on book leave now. We're going to miss him terribly. But his last piece before book leave for us was just basically a synthesis of all of the sites on the internet that are straining under the weight of AI, mostly in text, and how sort of the new web is not yet born, which we keep talking about on the show. Like there's something happening on the social web where something's going to change. We just don't know what it is. And it's fun to talk about. But James' piece is great because it kind of ties into exactly this study.
Yeah.
Right. If there's a text box on the internet and you can fill it faster and with more stuff, and that stuff is more convincing than ever before, people are going to do that at enormous amounts of scale. And
we're going to show a little bit about this. What Neela is saying is right, but it's hard to imagine because it's not here yet. It's just, again, millions of us are using chatbots. But what does this AI at scale look like on the internet? So we thought we'd first take you to a couple of clips where the founder of the browser company talks about this idea of and they have a product that they're, like I said, they have a Dia AI browser that they're testing. Why don't we run some of the clips, Neil, that show and describe this? This is Josh Miller.
Computing interfaces, like this one, and this one. At this company, you get to ask, how might these generic interfaces become more personal and powerful in this next era of computing?
There's this little blinking line in every text box, email, Google Docs, just sitting there blinking. It's called the insertion cursor. What if we bring this very personalized intelligence to every text box to that cursor? So for example, Apple released the original iPhone in, I don't remember the year. Instead of having to go open a new tab, I can just click on the cursor itself and it'll go out and find, 2007. And then I can keep going. The original specs were, once again, I can just ask my cursor, hey, will you go fill that out for me? Do that research for me?
This prototype, while small and early, highlights what it means to build a new computing environment at the browser layer. This interface isn't confined to one product. We have all the context to make it personal and powerful out the box.
Because it is the browser, it understands the broader environment that it's in. I'm trying to find holiday gifts for my sisters. I open a bunch of tabs. I want my wife's advice. I can just go to my little writing buddy and say, paste the Amazon links and ask Valerie which is best for Emma. right? So this would be usually like a back and forth between all the tabs, copy and paste the URLs, write a little thing. Instead, it'll just do that like futzing for me.
So Josh introduces this idea of intelligence in the browser tabs and windows that basically helps you where you are. There is another clip, and Neil, why don't we introduce that? And if you have thoughts on where this is going, that'd be great as well.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and play that, and then I can kind of walk through some of my thoughts.
If you think about it, your browser has a lot of context about who you are and what you're working on. And so one of the things you can do in Dia is you can say, what was that doc that Cyrus sent me about Heidegger? And it's going to go out and it's going to search through all of the memories, which are just local on my computer. It never leaves my device. And look, it found the exact Notion doc, even though I didn't remember the title. Why don't you email this to Josh and ask him what he thinks? And because it's my environment, because it's my browser, it knows what email I use because I'm logged into Gmail and I use Gmail all the time. Actually, just create a calendar event for Friday at 4 p.m. with Josh, right? And so I can think with my computer for the first time, and it can wield my tools, and it can do that without any special APIs. It's just the fact that it's a browser. And there's a consistent theme. It's take a part of the browser that's always existed and just upgrade it to be that much more personalized and that much more intelligent.
So Neil, this is one of the prototypes of what these experiments look like. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes to what we were talking about. I believe it wasn't last week, but the week before. Johnny Ive and Sam Altman kind of rethinking AI from a first principles type of view. So, I mean, instead of just slapping on an AI button or just adding, Gemini or Siri to an existing browser, kind of like the approach that Apple and Google are seeming to take as of now, I think just rethinking what a browser is and how we have this like vast amount of context about us as users through our browsers, and how can we kind of use that data to leverage this kind of personal model just on us based on our browsing history, our habits, and how can these like basic interfaces like a cursor, like a mouse, be reimagined to better serve us as a user. I mean, I think we have a good amount of clips to go through, so I'm not going to play it, but there's a clip later in this interview, in this demo where Josh kind of shows that the actual mouse, how they've reimagined that to where you could send the mouse off on a task to do something on its own while you're trying to finish other things. I mean, the example that he has is one where he's trying to shop for some items that they need for a video that they're shooting, and somebody has sent him kind of this shopping list. Instead of having to go and actually find every item on Amazon, he just sends this kind of browser agent that he has to go ahead and shop for all these things, find the best deals, add them to his cart. In the meanwhile, he can go make a cup of coffee, go check on whoever else he's working on a task with. And I mean, I think that's kind of where, I mean, it's no surprise that is where these tools are going to, where we can kind of automate a lot of these tasks that would have taken us out of our way, and kind of just give them off to an agent.
And we'll have the clips to all of these videos in the show notes, so you can watch these at your own convenience. Josh Miller, they've made a lot of progress since that video was made, and they literally Josh Miller went on the website Waveform, the podcast, and this is MKBHD, one of the most popular tech reviewers in the world with 20 million followers. And he talked a little bit more about the inspiration around Dia and what can be done. And it's an interesting interaction because you've got some of the most avid tech users basically interacting with Josh on their ideas as well as to where this could go, etc. Why don't we play the first clip, Neil, on this? This is again Josh Miller as a guest on Waveform, which is the MKBHD podcast discussion with two of his colleagues.
Perfect. And just to give some context before we hit play, this is kind of Josh talking about the pain point of how regular people are using AI right now, and how kind of he believes that this needs to be fully and fundamentally rethought.
Perfect.
Or art. And I feel like in the past 6 months, 9 months, all of them have started talking to these AI chat tools for everything in their life. You know, my friend who works in manufacturing that I was talking about, I was hanging out with him a couple weekends ago, and he was saying there's not a professional project or personal chore that he does not turn to AI in some way to get help with.
Wow, yeah.
And the last time, there have been 2 times in my life that has happened where I woke up one day and all of my personal friends changed the way they interface with their computers. When I was in middle school and everyone got on AIM and MySpace and LiveJournal and Facebook, and then in college, starting with the BlackBerry and then the iPhone, when we started doing things like Instagram and then stories on Snapchat. This is that 3rd time in my life. And I feel like because we're so in the tech world talking about AI, and I actually think I did a poor job of leading us about a
So he sets the context well, in terms of these transition points that are going on the web. And the first point he starts with is that everyone in his life. So it's, in our first show, Neil, we talked about Sam Altman saying, hey, the younger generations tend to use ChatGPT more different than the older ones. And this again emphasizes that a little bit. And it's a very insightful driver to what leads them to Dia. Why don't we play the next clip on that?
Perfect. Yeah. The next clip is kind of Josh talking about how Gen Z, I mean, we'll bring up a clip in a bit, but basically this new browser that they have, Dia, they've been alpha testing it with college students. So this is them kind of talking about how whenever they gave it into the hands of these students, how they found use cases that they would have never originally thought of.
and talk to people that are not in tech, it's somewhere in the middle, but I would actually say slightly closer to the AGI side of it is rewiring how people interface with their computers. There was this University of Nebraska student I interviewed, and she was talking about I turned to it for meal planning and for help with outfits and friend advice in school. And so the foundational kind of observation of Dia was that what is a browser? It is technically a user agent. Your browser is designed to represent you to web pages and web servers and bring stuff back on your behalf. And so it seems so clear outside of the tech world and ARC and all that stuff aside that people wanted to interface with the internet, not just with web pages anymore, but with AI models and probably in the future agents like deep research. And shouldn't your interface to the internet be able to both handle web pages and chat and models and agents? And so that was the observation that made us so excited to work on Dia. We can obviously.
And so I think that encapsulates, again, this generation business again, about how the younger people are thinking about it very differently, and the older people are going to catch up. So, Neil, how excited did this make you? Because you've been an ARC user a long time, and the prospect with Dia to come.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh touches on something super important is that our browsers is something that people just kind of use and they are happy with what they have, but it is kind of this, in terms of context, that is kind of the next holy grail as to what everyone is chasing. Sam talked about it in his interview he had with Sequoia that we covered a couple weeks ago, that in the future he sees OpenAI just having one small model that has a context on your entire life, your emails, phone calls, text messages, and is able to kind of help you reason through these kind of everyday life scenarios. And I kind of touched on this, whenever we covered that I have friends that kind of turn to ChatGPT for advice on school, advice on personal life, advice on work, finances, gym routines, meal plans. It's something that a lot of people are leaning on. And I think the fact that Josh and ARC are thinking through how we have access to so much personal context, and this really should be leveraged in a way that can help the user, go about their everyday life a lot easier is very hopeful. And as we'll cover in the next few clips, I think they've done a couple really interesting things in terms of how they're handling context to better serve, as this kind of user agent, as he calls it.
Yeah, I think one of the key points why the browser, number one, it's the most widely used application on the planet, with billions of people using browsers every day on desktops and mobile. Second is it has all our data and our trust, because we generally trust our browsers with all our personal data. It knows everything about us, literally when we're awake till we're going to sleep. And that data capture is a key piece, key fuel. We had a video, Neil and I, a couple of weeks ago, a few days ago, about how the physical AI is being transformed with robots where we had NVIDIA's one of the chief scientists on the robot AI side, Jim Fan, talk about how they had to recreate the fuel to run these robots with data, with synthetic applications. Where here, the browser has all that data. And I think we have a clip that kind of talks to a little bit of that, right, Neil?
Yeah, so the first clip I'm going to pull up is one where he's kind of addressing how they're aiming to tackle this browser issue that, the Vergecast folks kind of talked about at the beginning, and then we'll go into this next clip about his interesting take on how tabs are kind of this new form of oil and data.
Like the definite answer. But the theory of DIA is, so if you go back to the idea of a browser as a user agent, and it's a user agent for web pages, and now it's going to be a user agent for models and chat. I think one of the things we concluded with Arc is that Chrome actually and Safari do great jobs with web pages. Obviously, there are things around tab management and along the sides, but like I think for most people, they're fine with the way their user agent, their browser opens tabs. Mm-hmm. When you talk to those people, I referenced the college friend and my wife about what is frustrating about these AI chat tools. We really hear two things. The first is it's a pain in the butt to get that context out of whatever app or file you're working in into the chat tool so it has the awareness of what you're working on to do the damn thing. The second thing that frustrates them is it doesn't know anything about them. Even with memory, it knows the chats that you've had, but it doesn't really know what is your taste, what is your writing style, what are the things that you love, what are the things that you don't like. The browser, the traditional browser and traditional web pages solve both of those issues because as we
So it's like the old famous axiom where the famous bank robber was asked, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, that's where the money is. And that kind of comes to play here. Go to the browser because that's where the data is. That's where the user pattern preferences, all the private information is. Use that to leverage the AI generated help that is needed. So obvious reason why AI browsers are potentially the next big thing.
Exactly. And here's our next clip on how Josh is kind of highlighting this a bit more, talking about how tabs are this new oil, almost.
You know how when you use Instagram Reels or TikTok, for better or worse, it feels like every swipe, every action like teaches the algorithm to better understand you?
Yeah.
The way that it should feel in the future is that in an AI browser like Dia, every tab that you open, it feels like this model. It's not Sam Altman's GPT-4o. It's like GPT David. Mm-hmm. And it's getting better and better and trained for you every action that you take so that when you ask a question about something else, it not only has the context of that tab that you don't have to copy and paste into a tool, yeah. It also remembers the last 7 shopping sessions that you did or the last 17 things that you wrote. Yeah.
And that is point on. And I love the business about GPT David, who's the gentleman sitting right next to Josh. The idea is that this stuff has to be personalized for each one of us. And this is something Sam talks about a lot as well. But he is currently disadvantaged because everyone goes to chatgpt.com and your usage there is noted over there. But whenever you go back to doing regular things on your computer, ChatGPT has no access to that stuff. And that is the gap. And that is where companies like Google and Apple are very well positioned to take advantage. And that's where these kinds of startups are going to have to leverage and get access to that data. And so, that those are the potential partnerships and acquisitions and other things that may come down the pike. And I think we have one more clip, right, Neil?
Yes.
Again, coming back to this generational change is that the younger people are like, tadpoles in water to this stuff. They take what's even possible from the companies themselves and take it in a whole different direction. So this last clip we want to play is one of the younger people at the browser company who is introducing a novel use that one of the younger users in college came up with for Dia, which is still in alpha stage. It's not productized, but they were excited about it to potentially think about how do you build it into the ultimate Dia AI browser when it's out. Let's play that.
So as our final hack of the day, I'm actually really excited about this one because it emerged really organically from the student community, and it's really hacky, but I kind of love that because I think it really represents the early alpha stage Dia is in right now. So in Dia, you can personalize how Dia talks to you, but students, as always, are taking it further in ways we never expected. So this is Harry. He's a student at Bentley, and he basically realized you could use this personalization pane to create these custom shortcuts for things he was doing every day.
Overall, I want to say like maybe I save like 30 minutes just typing prompts every day. So that adds up to a lot.
So Harry set up his Dias so that he could just type the words sum and Dia would know to summarize whatever he was looking at. Or he could type pros, cons, and Dia would know to give the pros and cons of whatever topic was on the page.
One of the things I like to do is read financial news and also just business news every morning. So for example, this article from NPR about Trump's plan for movie tariffs. So one of the things I like to do is summarize, just to summarize the entire article, so I know what the key takeaways are. But kind of building on from there, I think it's really important to understand the bias and also the pros cons. So this is one of the commands I also use. This has been able to really save a lot of time for me.
So Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, before we kind of get into the actual hack that they showed, I think this is kind of what made Arc such an appealing, Arc and the browser company and kind of everything they stand for, such an appealing product and a company, is just because of the fact that we're kind of reached this stage where, companies have these annual updates. I know we're kind of in developer season right now. We have WWDC coming up. We had IO last week or the week before. Kind of we're kind of waiting every year periodically for these new updates, and I think many others believe that fundamentally with the way AI is and how fast everything is iterating, it's really hard to stick to a yearly a yearly update cycle because the tech is changing so fast. And this kind of brings up the conversation we had earlier a couple episodes ago about how incumbents are beating, sorry, how these new startups are kind of beating these well established companies just because of the fact that they are able to rapidly iterate and rapidly change things. I mean, the thing that I think drew most people to Arc, I know they're kind of moving on from Arc now, but just this kind of core principle that the browser company had was they'd have these like Thursday updates, or every update they'd send out a newsletter, what they're currently trying to do and what they're implementing in these new patches and fixes and stuff like that. So I feel like being able to rapidly iterate is something that's really appealing for a company like this, and kind of getting into the feature that he talked about. Backslash sum, backslash pro con. I mean, these are syntaxes that people are used to because of things like Discord and whatnot, Slack even, you're able to quickly add people. Bringing this like familiar syntax into these platforms where people, my age are just able to, quickly have to onboard. I mean, I think there's a really big conversation to be had about how SEO has kind of taught people to talk in a certain way, and how the shift is kind of moving now to more, a natural language in terms of how we interface with our computers. I think it's really interesting to see that they are taking all that into account and they're trying to build that into their product.
And what I love about this is, the old other expression, "What goes around comes around." It's really a lot of fun, getting to be my age. I'm hopefully not that old, but when young kids like you and that fellow on the screen is getting excited about /sum /procons, and it's a great hack. My world of computing 30, 40 years ago started with terminal mode and then /list for directory and dir. That was MS-DOS. We've been doing / for a very long time, and now it's all coming around to this thing. And this will go to way beyond with voice and GUI. And Neil and I did an episode on that as well, where we talk about how voice and GUIs could actually create new interfaces. So all this is just the beginning of the beginning. And the Arc browser and the Dia browser from the browser company is but one of several companies, all the way from Google Chrome, Apple Safari, to Perplexity with Comet, to OpenAI with their browser, to I'm sure a few more that will come out of the woodwork in the next little bit. This is going to be a wide open space and a lot of creativity And ultimately, it's going to be us users who will decide of all generations what this stuff, what it will do for us, how much we'll allow it to do things for us, etc. So things are about to change. So that's the good news. And the other good news, again, the glass half full, is that the internet, which currently feels broken in the context of this threat of AI that kind of shakes up the model as it is for a lot of small, medium, and large websites, especially the smaller ones that are the long tail that are currently using what's called search engine optimized revenue streams that bring in half their traffic or more and half their revenue or more from the Googles and the Metas of the world. They're going to have to live in a different world where AI is taking their content, etc., and how they can continue to produce the content, fund the content to cater to the AI agents that are going to come in. And those things are uncertain and big question marks. So that's scary. But it's also for entrepreneurs, because most of these people are entrepreneurs, it's also exciting because everyone knows you've got to have win-win-win scenarios. And the industry, I'm confident because I've seen it over 30 years of tech waves and changes, generally figures out ways to make everyone happy and create win-win-win. And I think that's where we'll ultimately end up. It'll take a little while. It'll be lots of bumpy rides, but it's very exciting to see where we might be going. So Neil, thank you for your help on this. I think this is hopefully, as usual, if you guys have thoughts, comments, questions, hit us up with them in the comment section. We always love to hear from you all. And of course, at any time, as always, like and subscribe. AI Reset to Zero, which has the actual posts that we've talked about. We'll have them in the show notes. We have actually three posts that I've written recently. One on how the generational changes is happening. 723 is on the area of the AI browsers, which is 733. And the third one being this area of how the internet is broken or threatened and how it could change, which is number 739. So you'll have that up to read, and there's a lot more links, etc. you can all look at as well. So again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. As always, stay tuned.
Thank you.